It should, but it's not working for me. But anyway, thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Nope. Now we're recording now. So, and then along the way, if anyone has questions as we go, feel free to add them into the chat, and we'll reply as we go. I think Chris is muted. Chris, you're muted, man.
Chris,
Oh, sorry about that. Was I on mute?
yeah, the whole time.
Oh boy, sorry about that. So thanks everybody. As Kurt had mentioned, my name is Chris. I'm going to walk you through the system today. I've logged into the test environment, and when you log in, you'll generally be taken to either the contracts dashboard or sourcing dashboard. To get to the sourcing dashboard, you can hover over sourcing, and then sourcing events, and then click on sourcing event home. And this will take you to the sourcing dashboard, which will show you a summary of sourcing events. You can change that to look at it by status or by owner or by type. So there's a couple of different ways to look at it. There'll be a search that'll allow you to search for sourcing events by name or number. You can get into an advanced search as well. There'll be quick links here that'll allow you to quickly create and manage your own sourcing events, or search for events that you need to approve. And then there's a key event dates widget at the bottom, which will show you, events that are about to open or close, or, so it keeps you kind of informed about sourcing events that have dates either upcoming that will either open up or close. But to create a brand new sourcing event, you can do that a couple of ways. If you're on this sourcing homepage and you've got this quick link to create new event, you'll be able to quickly click on that link. Otherwise, what you can do is you can go to sourcing, sourcing events, and then click create new event. So when you do that, the first thing you're going to do is give your sourcing event a name. In this case, I'm going to call it Landstar to Controller. Okay. You're going to want to give your event a unique name, something that you can pick out from a list of other sourcing events, just so that if you're looking through a list, it's easy to find. And then you're going to choose a work group for your sourcing event. So many of you, this work group will automatically be selected for you because you'll just be tied to one campus, and therefore be tied to just one work group. However, some folks at the chancellor's office and others may have the ability to select work groups here. If you're one of those folks, what you're going to do is click into it, and you can start typing in the work group name and then select it. Otherwise, you can click on the little magnifying glass, and that's going to pop up a big list of all of the campuses as work groups, and you'll be able to scroll through it and find it and select it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and click next. Next, on the event type, you're able to select the type of event that you want to create. So again, you can click in here and start typing and select, or you can click on the little magnifying glass and select it. So typically when you first start using the system, you might just click the magnifying glass. As you use it more and more, you'll just start typing in these and selecting. So after you've picked your event type, if we have event templates built out for you in the tool, you'll be able to click on the template and select it, or you can click on the little magnifying glass and find the event template. Just FYI, we're probably not going to have templates built out for you day one, but as we run more and more of these sourcing events and we gather good templates for requests for proposals and requests for quotes, we'll be able to build those into the tool, and those will help you create your sourcing events more quickly and efficiently. But for now, we're going to create it from scratch, so we're not going to choose a template, and we'll go ahead and click Create Sourcing Event. All right, so from here, I have started drafting my sourcing event. So as you can see, I can update the name if I want, selected the event type, work group, and it automatically populates an event number for me. So this isn't something that you have to edit. It's just going to automatically pop in there for you. Below that, we have a stage title. So you're only going to put in a stage title if you have a multi-stage event. So if you're running this as a qualification round, and then later on you're going to have the request for proposal, that would be an example of a multi-stage event, and you'd want to name the stages appropriately, right? So I might call this one qualification stage, right? And in this stage, maybe I'm just asking a bunch of questions, and later on I'll gather pricing once I have weeded out the suppliers who can and cannot fulfill the need, right? Or you might have just one RFP that you run and you're not making it a multi-stage. If that's the case, then you would just clear this out. And that's probably going to be the majority of your sourcing events are just going to be a single stage. So another example of multi-stage, you might have an initial bidding round, and then you might have a best and final offer at the end. So just FYI, the system does support multiple stages where you could, have different rounds and shortlist the suppliers through the different rounds and collect different pricing at each round. So it does support that functionality, but you don't have to utilize it if you don't need it. So we'll make this one just a single stage event, so we're not going to give a title. Next, we're going to choose whether or not we need ad hoc approvals here. So if you want somebody to approve your sourcing event before it goes out the door, this is where you can go in and add ad hoc approvals. If you don't need anybody else to review and officially approve your sourcing event before it actually goes out, then you would choose no here. So it's a yes or a no. I'll go ahead and choose yes just to show you what that looks like. But just note that if I choose no here, it's not going to have any ad hoc approvals. Okay. Next, as we scroll down, we'll focus in on payment here. So here you can give an estimated value for your sourcing event. This estimated value is not going to be visible to your suppliers. It's only visible to your internal users. So if you want to provide an estimated value here later on in reporting, you'll be able to see how much money you've saved by running the sourcing event instead of just buying it outright at the list price. So we'll go ahead and give an estimated value. Next, we'll go ahead and select our payment terms. So in the payment terms, you can designate how you plan on paying, or the payment terms you plan on using for this sourcing event. So if you don't want to tell your suppliers what the payment terms are and you'd rather negotiate that, you could leave this blank and then ask a question during the sourcing event as to which payment terms the supplier would accept. And you might use that to determine who you want to award your sourcing event, or at least an aspect of that. But some clients do like to dictate the payment terms. So if you decide, no, you know what, no matter what, we're going to pay net 45 for this, you might go ahead and select this, and this will let your suppliers know that you're planning on paying net 45. Below that, we have some of our bid and evaluation options. Again, you don't have to utilize these necessarily, but they are available to you. The first one is a sealed bid. So the sealed bid functionality available in the tool, what it essentially will do is if you say yes to this, then your internal users will not be able to see the bid submissions until after a sealed bid opening date. So this is to protect competition from somebody favoring one supplier over another. So you can just say yes to this if you want to do that. And then below, the system will ask you for the sealed bid opening date. So some clients even have a conference after the close date. So they'll have it, the event maybe close on October 17th, and then October 25th, they'll have the actual sealed bid opening date where people can actually, see the bids. So they might have a conference room open and a laptop where they will have the system open and show everybody, look, I can't see the bids, and now I'm opening it, and now I can see the bids. So you can even do that if you want to. So that's the sealed bid functionality. Panel questionnaire, what this does is determines whether or not you want to use a panel questionnaire later on in the tool. So you can have different subject matter experts or stakeholders rate either the way that their past experiences with the suppliers, or rate the way that the suppliers answered the questions in the sourcing event to determine who they want to award the sourcing event to. So this will give you a score, and you can use that to help you decide who you want to award the event to. So we can take a look at that later on. You can also use auto scoring and cost analysis. So if you if you have a question in your sourcing event and you're giving them a list of answers to select from, and you already know if the supplier selects answer choice 2, that's much better than answer choice 1, you can automatically give them a score, either a high score or low score, or adjust their cost up or down based on the answer to that custom question, to that question. So if I were buying a piece of equipment and I asked the supplier, what kind of warranty would you provide for this equipment? And my possible answers were either 0 to 2 years, 3 to 4 years, 5 to 6 years, or over 7 years or over. Obviously, a longer warranty is better. So if somebody gave me a better warranty, I might give them a better auto score, and I might also reduce their cost, because if the machine broke down during the course of the operation, it might be covered, and that actually might save me money in the long run. So those are examples of when you can use auto scoring and cost analysis. So we'll take a look at that in a bit. You can also decide if you want to allow alternate line items. So my common example of this is, is substitutes, right? So if you are looking for a 20-inch Dell monitor and one of your suppliers only has a 20-inch HP monitor, would you allow them to bid that 20-inch HP monitor? If so, then you would want to say, yes, I allow alternate line items. If not, you would say no, and then they would be bidding explicitly on the way that you've described the line item. Next is split order quantity in evaluations. So where this comes into play is if you have a large quantity of something you're looking to purchase, maybe PPE, and the suppliers who are bidding on the line item don't have enough inventory to satisfy your entire need, you can split up your award amongst multiple suppliers for a single line item if you say yes to this. So that's where this comes into play. And then finally, enforcing min and max pricing. A lot of clients don't utilize this, but if you have suppliers that are constantly bidding the wrong unit of measure, maybe you're looking for a yard of cable and they bid on a mile of cable, you can enforce kind of ridiculously low minimums or ridiculously high maximum pricing. And then if the supplier kind of bids above that maximum or below that minimum, the system will not allow them to successfully submit that bid. So that's what this functionality does for you. So then you'd set those min and max prices on each individual line item. Below that, we've got our display and communication options. So the first one here is whether or not the sourcing event would be visible to the general public on the public bidding site. So we'll take a look at that in a minute, and we'll say, yes, we do want to allow that. And then you can give a short event description here as well. Next, you're going to want to restrict buyer notifications. For the majority of these, you're going to say yes, because you don't want everybody who has access to the sourcing event getting all the notifications. So you'll want to say yes to this and decide who actually will get the notifications that come out of the system. Okay. Below that, you're going to designate the start date, opening date, Q&A submission date, and also if you made this a sealed bid, you would choose a sealed bid opening date. So we're going to quickly choose an opening date, and for this one, we'll just say today. It's got to be today or sometime in the future, typically, and then a close date. And then we'll choose a Q&A submission close date. So where this comes into play is if you have suppliers who are asking you questions 5 minutes before the close date, a lot of times that can be kind of annoying and inconvenient to deal with. So what some clients will do is they'll close down the Q&A board a few days early. That way they're not getting questions, you know, like 5 minutes before the event ends. So you have the option to do that, or you can just check the box to make it the same as the close date. Okay, we'll go ahead and click next. Next, you can select the event owners and contacts and stakeholders here. So as the event creator, I'm automatically an owner, which means I have full control over the sourcing event. I can build out all the content that I want. There are also event owners that come over from the work group. So if I'm working in maybe Sonoma, then maybe you know, Jennifer and Joy might automatically have access to my sourcing event just because I created it out of that Sonoma work group. But you know, some of the folks from the other universities would not have owner access to my event, but they might have stakeholder access to my event, which means they can view my event, but they can't necessarily edit it. But if I wanted one of those other users to have access to my event, what you can do is you can manually add them to your event. So let's just say I'm Joy or Jennifer, I'm creating an event in Sonoma, but I'm going to be working with another university. To add somebody there, I can click Edit Users, and then I can start typing in their name. And then I can select them and click Save Changes. So now I've just added Lori to my event. So Lori can help me draft the content of this sourcing event. So, you know, if we were authoring a sourcing event and the award of the sourcing event was going to affect multiple campuses, that's one way you can go in and add other users from other campuses to your sourcing event to help you build it out. And then, like I said, you can add stakeholders here. The stakeholders can view the sourcing event and the responses, but they can't edit the sourcing event. So if you have a subject matter expert and you want them to be able to view the event, this is where you would add them. And then finally, notification recipients. We're having, you know, lots and lots of users come over into your events as stakeholders. So you're going to want to make sure that when you set up your event, you say, yes, I want to restrict buyer notifications. And here on users, you're going to determine who actually will get the notifications about your sourcing event. So just kind of think about that. You know, is it a small dollar event and maybe only I need to be notified about the updates in the event? Then you're probably just going to leave it as yourself. If if it affects multiple campuses and it's a large dollar event, you may decide to notify other individuals about the updates that are involved in this event. So let's click next. Next, you can provide a description for your event. So you can either just start typing in the description here. If your template if you're building this from a template, your template may have already come with a description included in the template, and you just go through and edit that where necessary. But you can also have content pull over from a library as well. So if I click on copy from a library, I can choose the library, and the CSU can have multiple libraries associated with different either types of products or services or different campuses here. So if I click on this drop-down box, I can select which library I want to pick from. And then I can select the description in this case. So I can click select. And as you can see, it's going to build in a description for me. So then I can go through it, and if there was content that was highlighted, I can go in and update the content that was highlighted, right? Once I'm done drafting my description, I'll go ahead and click next. Oh, and by the way, if this is a multi-stage event, this is where you would give the stage description, right? So if this was a pre-qualification round, you could describe what it meant to be a pre-qualification round here. We'll go ahead and click next. On the next page, you have your prerequisites. So the prerequisites are a sort of gating mechanism to stop suppliers from continuing on in the bidding process if they don't agree to certain language that you put into the prerequisites, right? So if you have maybe insurance requirements or non-disclosure agreement you need them to accept, or terms and conditions you want them to accept, any kind of verbiage you want them to accept, and if they don't, they can't proceed on, this is where you would put that in the prerequisites. So to add a brand new prerequisite, I'm going to click add prerequisite. And then I'm either going to click add prerequisite to add one from scratch, or I can click add from library. And this will allow me to select a prerequisite from one of our pre-built libraries. So it makes it really nice and convenient to have these prerequisites pre-built out for you, because you can just check the box to select them, click add selected, and now I have added a prerequisite. Just that easy, right? But if you have maybe a unique prerequisite that you need to add just for your sourcing event, you can do that as well. To do that, you'll just click add prerequisite, and then you'll click add new prerequisite. So in the instructions, you'll tell the supplier what you want them to do. So this is not the verbiage of the prerequisite. This is just you telling them that they need to accept it. So I'm going to say, please review and accept the following insurance requirements. Okay, that's the instructions. And it's here where I'm actually going to put the verbiage of the prerequisites. So if you already have this saved in like a Word document, you can just upload the Word document here. Or you can type in the verbiage if you want. So I can click edit here. Okay, and then I can type in the text. Okay, and then we're going to pretend that we wrote out the rest of that, but I'm not going to do that for time's sake. So after you have your verbiage in here, you can go into the type. So you're never going to use optional, but you'll either use required to view or required to enter bid. So the required to view event is not used by public procurement organizations like yourself very often, because the supplier will not even be able to see the rest of the sourcing event until they accept the prerequisite. So a lot of organizations can't do that because they need everybody to see the entire sourcing event, even if they can't bid on it without accepting some things. So they will not. A lot of public procurement organizations won't accept this one unless you have like a non-disclosure agreement or something like that. What a lot of public procurement organizations will use is this required to view or to enter bid. So you'll let the suppliers see the contents of the sourcing event, but you won't let them submit their bid until they accept your prerequisite. So we'll go ahead and select that one. And then you've got some certification text you can adjust if you need to, and then you can determine if you want the supplier to have to upload a file. So if you do that, if you just check this box, and the supplier will have to accept it, or will have to upload a document to accept it. And then we'll click Save Changes. So you'll see we've got two prerequisites here. I'm going to go ahead and adjust one of them just to show you what a required to view event prerequisite will look like, even though you may never use it. So we'll click Next. Next, we have buyer attachments. So this is any kind of documentation that you as a buyer want to provide to the suppliers. So again, if you started this event from a template, the template may already have documents already attached here. So you can download those, update them, and attach new updated versions here. Or you may have documents that you want to pull from a pre-built library. So to do that, you just click Add Attachments and then Add from Library. Again, you can select the library here, and then you can select the documents that you want to attach and Add Selected. Okay, So if this was a document that came with the template and you needed to download it, make some changes, and then upload a new version, what you would do is obviously you click the link to download it. You would update that in Word or what have you, and then you go to Actions to upload a new version whenever you're ready to do that. To upload or to add a brand new attachment, not from the library or from the template, you can click on Add Attachment, Add New Attachment. And then as long as it's under 50 megabytes, you just upload that from a drive or a file that you have. If it's over 50 megabytes, again, you can break it up into multiple files, or if you have it linked somewhere on an SFTP or something like that, you could put in the link here. But in this case, we'll go ahead and just select it from our computer. Okay, so I put up a picture of the sitemap. And you can provide comments if you want to and save changes. So now I've got two documents I've attached to this sourcing event that my suppliers will be able to download as necessary. So let's continue on and click next. Next, we have supplier attachments. So this just lets your suppliers, this just lets you know that your suppliers will be able to attach as many documents as necessary. So let's go ahead and click next. So next in the questions section, we're able to ask questions of your suppliers. So again, you may have questions pre-built from your template. So those would just automatically appear here if they were built into the template. But you can also add questions from a library, and you can add questions from scratch. So to add questions from a library, you'd simply click on Add Question, and then Add Questions from a library. You can select the library that you want to pull questions from, and you can select it and click Add Selected. So that's one way of doing it. You can also add questions here by clicking on Add Question and then Add New Question. And then you can give a question text. So we're going to say this is the question text. And you can designate a response type. So in this case, we're going to say it's going to be a drop-down. So the supplier is going to be able to pick from a drop-down list. And we're going to say it's going to be required, and we're going to use auto scoring and cost analysis in this. Okay, and now we're able to give the possible responses. So we're going to say 0 to 2, and we'll give them no score and no cost adjustment. We'll say 3 to 4, and we'll give them a score of 4. And we'll reduce their cost by 2%. And then we'll say 5 to 6. Give them 8 points. Adjust their cost down by 4. And we'll just say 7+ years. We'll give them a score of 12. There we go. And we're going to adjust their cost down by 6%. So you don't have to use auto scoring and cost adjustment for every question. In fact, you don't have to use it at all. Just want to show you how that can happen. Go ahead and click Save Changes. Okay, so we can add multiple questions here. We can also add multiple groups of questions. So I can rename this group something else. So I can go to Manage Group, Edit Group, and we'll call this one just General Info. Okay, so we'll save that as one group of questions. I can also go in here to add, and I could add another group. So maybe we'll call another group of questions References. And then I can add questions in here. So it's nice to break up your questions into logical groupings to find later on. And if you have a very large number of questions, you can even break them up into different pages. So if you had like 200 questions, that'd be kind of hard to go through all in one kind of go. So you might want to break those up into like 3 or 4 different pages. And that makes it kind of easier for somebody to answer, you know, maybe 20 questions, 25 questions at a time, instead of seeing, you know, 100 or 200 questions all on one big page. So Just depends on how many questions you have as to whether you need to break them up into groups or pages. So we'll go ahead and remove this one. Just wanted to show you how that works. In addition, you can also import questions from a file too. So what you would typically do is add a couple of questions like this, and then you would export out what you had, and then it's going to put it into an Excel file format, and you'll be able to use that Excel document to populate with additional questions, and then you'll import that back into the tool. So I'll show you how that works really quickly. We'll export out some questions, export out the current questions, and submit that. And we'll refresh the page. So keep in mind, this is probably something you're only going to want to do if you have a lot of questions. So if you just have, 5, 10, 15 questions, a lot of times it's easier to just add the questions through the tool. But if you have 100 questions or 200 questions, that can be pretty time intensive to add it right through the tool. So you might want to download this Excel spreadsheet. So we'll download that. And if we pull this over, you can see the first page is all instructions, right? So this tells you how to fill out this, this document. And then if you go to page 1, for instance, this shows you all the different pages you could have, up to 10, and then the different questions you have here. So right now I've got one group under general info, and I've got 2 questions. The first question is, do you like cats or dogs? And you see the options are cats and dogs, and it's required. The next question I have is the number of years you guarantee the hardware, and then it's a drop-down list, and here are the options. I'm going to add one more question, so I'll go into the right here or left-hand side here and say I'm going to add a question. So I'm going to ask a kind of an open-ended question. Response required is a yes or a no. So you just, they have to answer it, you do yes here, or you could put no. You can make it conditional or not. In this case, we're not going to, and we're going to say it's a multi-line text because they can describe the answer. And in this case, that's the only one I'm going to add. I'm not going to add any other questions, and I'll just save that for now. So this is a little bit more of an advanced topic. In your first couple of sourcing events, don't bother trying to import questions and export questions. I would just go ahead and add them manually. But once you feel a little bit more comfortable with the tool, this is definitely something you want to look at, especially if you know you're going to build out events with lots and lots of questions. So now that I've saved that, I can go back in here under questions, and I'm going to go and import from a file. And I'm going to go ahead and import. So something that's important to note here is this import action will replace all the existing questions, and we'll replace them with what you have in the file. So that's why I exported what I had first, and then I just added on to what I had previously exported, because when you import the question, it's going to wipe out this and then replace it with what's in the import document. So just keep that in mind. So I'll go ahead and import. And it's important to validate first just to make sure that it all worked out. And we'll go ahead and choose our file here. And I can submit. And it's going to take just a moment here. All right, so it did successfully validate. So the good news is we know that it's going to work. So now we can go ahead and import it. Okay, a couple of things to note here. You can't just use any Excel spreadsheet. You have to use the template that comes with the tool. All right, so now I have successfully imported in that question. So if I go back into questions here, you can see here's my question. All right, let's move on. We'll click next. So next we have additional item fields. So this feature is not used very often, but what it'll allow you to do is either dictate additional information about the line items or ask for information about specific line items. So one example I might say is maybe I want to know the country of origin of the material. And I need to know that for each individual line item. Maybe I'm asking for bid pricing on 10 different line items, and I want to know the country of origin on all 10 line items. What you can do is you can add additional item fields, and you can ask that the supplier provide you with that information on each line item. So the question section here is really more about the overall sourcing event and not about individual line items. If you need to ask questions about individual line items, this is where you would do it. So I can click on create additional field, and I can add or I can create additional field here. I can give it a name. Okay, I can designate whether this is going to apply to product line items or service line items or both. And then I can designate whether the supplier can respond or not. So if the supplier is not going to respond, then I would essentially just be giving this answer to the supplier. And if I'm saying the supplier can respond, then I'm going to ask the supplier respond to this. So again, not used all that often. You can, you don't have to add any of these, but you can if you need to. Next, we have the pricing components. So if you just have, basic catalog line items that you're asking somebody to bid for, you would never use pricing components. But if you're buying a more complex product or service, there may be multiple components to the individual product or service, and you may want to gather the pricing of each of the components, right? So one example is, a software implementation, right? So you might have training services, implementation services, license fees, lots of different components into the price of something. And you may want to compare the individual price components of that overall, service. So this is where you can do that. If you wanted, if you don't need that, you can just go right to the line items and add the different line items and just get a kind of a standard price for the overall line items. But if you want to break them out into cost components, this is where you can do that. So you can click on create item price component and then click create that again. And we'll say hardware design is one of them. You give a description. You can designate whether the supplier response is required, and you can designate whether it's a fee or an allowance, and whether it should apply to products, services, or both. And we'll add another one here, and we'll just call this one okay. And I'm not going to add a whole bunch here, but just so you know, you can add as many of these as you need to. We'll click next. Next, you're able to put in the product or service line items for the products or services you're looking for bid pricing on. So to add these product or service line items, you can click add product line item and then add new item. And then you're going to give the item a name. So we'll call this one controller. And you can give it a description. And if it has a catalog, you can designate the catalog. You can designate a quantity here. If the quantity is kind of fluid and the supplier could actually dictate the quantity of whatever is needed, you can check this box, and that'll allow the supplier to dictate how much quantity of something that would be needed in their proposal. Otherwise, if you're buying, something where you know how much you need, you would just not check that box and you tell them how much you need. You can select a unit of measure here. So this could be each, or it could be hours, or it could be lot for lot pricing. And then you can either specify a specific requested delivery date. So you can say, I want you to deliver this product or service by the 22nd, or you can state a number of days after the award. So you can say, I want you to provide this product or service 10 days after we award it to you. So it's up to you as to how you want to do that. And then you're going to want to require unit pricing for at least one line item, typically. Maybe all line items, it just depends, but you'll definitely want to require unit pricing for at least one line item. Otherwise, the suppliers might submit their bid without even telling you how much anything is. So make sure you select that you want unit pricing for anything that you would actually require unit pricing on. And you can also require that they give you an estimated delivery date. So that's another option you have. And then you can specify historic unit prices and target pricing. Just keep in mind, again, the suppliers are not able to see this, but if you want to use this for, reporting later on to see how much money you save, that's a valid case for that. Okay. So we'll go ahead and click Save Changes. So I can add as many line items as I need. You can also add service line items. The key difference between product and service line items is service line items, you're going to give a requested delivery date range. So you would have like a start date for when the services will start being provided and an end date for when they will stop being provided. Whereas for products, you're just going to give them a requested delivery date. So it's just going to be, 10 days after the award or on the 15th, for instance. It's not going to be a date range for the products. So we'll go ahead and click Next. So next, you're able to specify which suppliers you want to invite to your sourcing event. If you mark that this is a public bid, then you can essentially, you don't have to put in any suppliers here, but it is recommended that you put some suppliers in here so they are invited to participate in the event. So right now, what you typically do is just go ahead and search for them by name and add them by name. So if you know your supplier's name, you can go ahead and search for them that way. Later on, you'll be able to search for them by commodity code as well. So if you want to invite all the suppliers that registered with a specific commodity code, you could search for them and add them to your event. So that's another way of doing it. We'll go ahead and just add a couple of suppliers here. So I'm going to first search for the suppliers. And we'll find them and add them. So I'm going to go ahead and add this supplier. And that's the person I want to add. So I've added this person to my event, and I can go and modify my search, and I can search for other users as well. So I'm going to search for David. And let's go ahead and add David to our event. Hope you don't mind, David. And we'll search for one more supplier maybe. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead. Let's see if we can find Joy or Jennifer. You guys feel like participating in our event today?
Sure.
All right.
Browsing, of course.
All right, we'll add Jennifer as well. So now we got 3 suppliers. You could have 3, you could have 50, you could have 100, doesn't matter. And whenever we're done, we can go ahead and submit our event for approval. Now, remember, I did say that I wanted to do ad hoc approvals. If I go back into setup and I say, do I need ad hoc approvals? Nah, I'm the only one who needs to review and approve this. So if I click no here and I go to review and submit, you're going to see there's no approvals. As soon as I submit this, it's technically considered approved. But if you need approvals, you can always go back here and say yes, save progress, and then go here. And now you'll see, okay, there's a step for me to add the ad hoc approvals. So I'd add them kind of in the middle here. And once I've gotten all my approvals, there's a post ad hoc review step that'll allow me to review the event after the approval. So if you don't need any approvals, just say no to the ad hoc custom field. If you do need them, you're going to say yes, and this is where you're going to set them up. So I'll go ahead and click submit for approval, and we'll return to my event, and we'll go to tools, and we'll go to approvals, and we can see it's going to automatically go back to me in this ad hoc setup step. And here under workflow actions, I can go ahead and add an ad hoc step, and I can designate who needs to review it as an ad hoc approver. So maybe David Gee needs to review it. Okay, and I'll save that. So boom, I've added an ad hoc step, and it's going to go to David, and he would have the chance to review it before before it eventually went out to the suppliers. So I'll go ahead and approve my step, and you'll see that it's going to automatically route to David here, and David would get an email, and he'd be able to click on a link in that email, get into the event, and review all the content, and then ultimately he'd go in and approve it. Now, you wouldn't have the ability to approve this step on your own here, but I happen to be an administrator, so I can go ahead and just approve it. And I'll approve it out of this step as well. So once it gets all the approvals in this approval queue here, that's when the event status is going to change from pending approval to approved. And in just a moment here, it's going to change to open. And that's when your suppliers are going to be able to go in and start bidding on your sourcing event. So let's refresh that one more time. And there it is. Now my sourcing event has opened up. And let's go ahead and take a look at this from the supplier's perspective. All right. So here is the email notification that your suppliers are going to receive. It's got your logo up here. You've been invited to participate in this sourcing event. And it gives the event number and the title and the opening date and closing date and who's issuing it. And they can click on a link here to get into the sourcing event. So if they've already got an account, they can log in, and that's going to take them directly into the sourcing event to start bidding. If they have never logged into this system before, it would take them into a short user creation screen before they'd be able to go in and start bidding on your event. So here on the summary screen, they can see various information here. I'm not going to read through it all, but you can see they've got this information, they've got your contact information, and then they've got the description. And then they can proceed to the prerequisites. But notice that I cannot yet click on the attachments. Can't see the attachments, can't see the questions, the items, nothing like that, right? And that's because I've got this prerequisite that is required in order to view the event. Remember, I made this one required to view. So once I go in and I look at this and I agree, now I have accepted all the requirements that are required to view the event. So now I can go in as the supplier and take a look at the questions, take a look at the items, all that good stuff. Great. But I can't actually go in and start bidding. You see, I can't put in my item pricing, can't do anything yet. And that's because I haven't accepted the prerequisites that are required to enter my bid. So I need to go into this prerequisite here, and I need to accept this. And I need to say, yes, I intend to bid. And now I can go in and I can download the attachments. I can go in and upload my own attachments. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'll upload an attachment real quick. So I've uploaded my own attachment. I can go into the questions and start answering questions. Okay. After I've answered all the questions, I can go in and start putting in item pricing. So you'll notice that the supplier can either put in price component pricing, or they can give you an all-in pricing. So that's kind of an option that they have. And here's the additional item field that I put. So I can either do this, I can say, and save my progress. Or what I could do, and I would put, so I can either do it that way, or I can click on use all-in pricing instead and just give the unit price there. So next, in fact, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this, and I'll just say, nah, I want to use all-in pricing. And I'll save that. Okay. So now I've got that all set up and ready to go. Before I submit my bid, I want to show you how the Q&A board is going to work. So your suppliers can click on the Q&A board and they can ask you a question. I don't know, probably not a great question, but they can go ahead and submit a question, and that's going to go into a Q&A board, right? So as the buyer, I'm now in the system as the buyer. You can go into tools, and you can go to the Q&A board. Now the system, if you signed up for notifications, you can be notified about whenever you get questions in the Q&A board. So you can go into your sourcing event and you can answer your questions. So you can choose to, answer the question, or you can decline to answer the question, or you can post a question like this. So 3 different options there. I'm going to go ahead and just answer the question. So you can give an answer. Okay. And you can even attach documentation as part of your answer. And when you answer your question, you can decide if you want to post this to the public Q&A board, or if you wanted this to just be a private message back and forth. So if you say no here, only the supplier who asked the question would see your answer. If you say yes here, then all of the suppliers who are bidding in the event will be able to see the question and the answer you provide to the question. They won't see the supplier that asked the question, but they will see the question that was asked and your answer to the question. So it's important to note, before you say yes here, just make sure that the supplier didn't put their name in their question. Otherwise, you can't really say yes here. So I'm going to go ahead and post my answer. All right, so now I've successfully posted my answer to the question. If I go back to the supplier's perspective and we refresh our screen, now we see, okay, here's their question that they asked, and here's the answer that you provided to them. So they can ask follow-up questions, and they can see, buyer questions that have been unanswered, and my questions versus questions posted, Q&A posted to the Q&A, public Q&A board. But I'm going to go ahead and review and submit my bid. So we'll go ahead and certify, and we'll submit our response. And that's it. As the supplier, I have successfully submitted my bid. So I'm going to navigate away from the supplier's perspective, and we'll go back to the buyer's perspective. And what we'll do now is we'll go into evaluations and we'll click on supplier responses. So in the supplier responses, thank you, Jennifer. Wow, she's really going to win this bid. We can see the percent complete of each supplier. But if this was a sealed bid, that's pretty much all we'd be able to see is who successfully submitted a bid versus who didn't. We wouldn't be able to go in and actually review their responses. But since this is not a sealed bid, I can actually click into these and I can see the responses here if I wanted to. Can see all this stuff. But we'll go back to our event. And in this case, we're going to say, yeah, you know what? We've got our 2 bids. Let's go ahead and close this event early. So, I could wait until I got all my bids in or till the close date of the sourcing event. But if I've gotten my bids all in early, you can go into workflow actions and you can click close early. You can also withdraw your event. So if you just want to cancel the whole thing, you just click withdraw event. If you need to make a change, you can amend the event. So to do that, you just click amend event. You'd go in and make the changes. So you could add line items, you could add questions, you could add attachments, you could adjust things, and then you would submit that. And then that would notify your suppliers that an amendment has been made and they can adjust their bid if they need to. But we'll go ahead and just close it early. And we're closing it early. All right, so you notice that now the event status has changed from open to under evaluation. So it's in this evaluation stage where you're able to go in and review the bids and make a decision as to who we want to award the sourcing event to. But before we do that, I'm actually going to run a panel questionnaire for this event. So to do that, one, I would have need to set up this event where I said, yes, I want to use panel questionnaire. So make sure if you're going to use a panel questionnaire, you say yes to this whenever you're setting it up in the beginning. And now that I have done that, I can go into panel questionnaire and let's set up our panel questionnaire. Okay, so we'll start by putting in a point value. So we can say, well, the total possible points anyone can get on this one is 200 points. And we're going to do it by points and not percentages. And we'll give a close date for our questionnaire. So that's the last date somebody could submit their questionnaire responses. And then you have a couple of options as to whether you want to anonymize the supplier information and also whether you want to just show a single supplier response per page, or if you want to allow them to share multiple or see multiple responses in a single page. So if you're using this first option, just keep in mind that you need to ask people to rate the responses based on the way that the suppliers have answered the questions in the event. You're not going to want to ask them to rate their responses with their previous experience with the supplier, because they're not going to, when you anonymize the supplier information, they're not going to know who they're rating what. So just keep that in mind. We'll go ahead and put in the ratings. So we can tell the system what ratings we're going to offer to our panelists, what they can select from. And in this case, I'm just going to do a simple 1 to 3. So I'm going to say 1 is poor. Whoops. There we go. That's better. 2 is average. 3 is good. So those are our 3 ratings. We could do a 1 to 3, 1 to 5, 1 to 10. I wouldn't go too much farther than 1 to 10 though, because it doesn't end up displaying or working as well. So keep it somewhere between a 1 to 3 or 1 to 5, or maybe even up 1 to 10. So we'll go ahead and click next. And I'm actually going to get back to panelists here in a moment. I'm going to set up my questions first. So I'm going to go ahead and you can decide how many pages you want. So if it's just a short, simple questionnaire, it might be 10 questions. You just have 1 page. If you had like a 50-page questionnaire or a 100-page questionnaire, then you might want like multiple pages to help break them up and make it easier to digest. But we're just going to have 1 page for now. So we'll click next. Okay, and then it's going to take us in here. And we'll be able to add the questions to our panel questionnaire. So if you add the questions from your event, what's going to happen is the system is going to show the question text, and it's also going to show the responses that your suppliers provided. So this, you're only going to be, if you anonymize the supplier information or the supplier names, you're only going to be able to use questions from the event. But if you don't anonymize the supplier information, then you can add questions, and it would be kind of, you know, their personal experience with the supplier, right? So one way or the other. I'll go ahead and add a question here. And you know what, I'll add a whole new group of questions. So we'll add a group. So we'll add a group just for accounts payable info, and we'll rename this group operations. Okay, and I can go ahead and add a new question. And maybe I'll just add one more. Okay, so I've added a couple of questions here. If I click next, I can add weights to each. So the total weights of all the pages have to equal up to the total max. So these, in this case, it's easy for me because there's only one page. So this is going to equal up to 200. And then all the groups in an individual page have to equal up to the pages total. So I can just do maybe like, let's do 160 here, and this one's only going to equal up to 40. So your weights don't have to be equal. You can count one group of questions a lot more than the others. So I can say, you know what, this warranty question is really important. That's going to be maybe 120 points out of the 160 that are associated with this group. And then maybe this one is worth, let's just say 30. And this one's nice to know, but maybe it's only worth 10. Okay. And then under this one, under accounts payable, I can say, well, this one is worth 30 points and this one's only worth 10. Okay. So you can divide up your points as you see fit here and click next. And we can add our suppliers. So we can select all the suppliers that we want to be in the panel questionnaire. And I'm going to go back to panelists now because I want to show you something. I'm going to go ahead and add my panelist. Search for Chris, and I'll add Chris. You can add one panelist, you could have 5, you could have 10, you could have 20. But in this case, I'm just going to have, or you know, any number between. In this case, I'm just going to have 1. And if you go to actions here, by default, they're automatically assigned to rate all the groups of questions. So they'd be assigned to rate this group of questions and this group of questions. But you can go into a panelist and go to actions, and you can edit the group assignment to say, you know, this person, Chris Jones, he works in accounts payable. He doesn't work in operations, so it doesn't make sense for him to rate operations questions. So I'm going to make only the accounts payable questions visible, and I'm going to say that he has to rate them, and click Save and Close. So if you have, you know, groups of questions that certain panelists should only be asked to rate, you can break them up into different groups and assign them to different panelists if you want to. But I'm going to go ahead and publish my panel questionnaire. So what's going to happen is your panelists are going to get, again, a system email or an in-app notification letting them know that they have a panel questionnaire to rate. And they can go into the My Responses, and they can go ahead and view their response. And here they can start providing responses to these different questions, right? So first question, do you like cats or dogs? And so these questions where we're asking them to rate from the answers in the sourcing event, you'll see that it gives us the question that was asked in the sourcing event and the supplier's response here. So this is the only kind that you can use when you anonymize the supplier names, because what you're really doing here is you're rating how they answered these questions. Whereas below that, under the accounts payable group of questions, you'll notice I didn't use that. I didn't use questions from the event. I just used, general relationship with that particular supplier, right? So how accurate were were the supplier's invoices in the past? Well, I have to know their name in order to give a response to that. So I couldn't anonymize their name if I was going to do it this way. So I'll go ahead and start rating these. I'm going to say good, good. This is good. That's average. Average. That's good. And then we'll go ahead and rate these as well. Okay, and then you can give comments here as well. Your panelists can give comments, so they can click on this. Okay, and then when you're ready, they're going to save changes, save their progress, and once they've answered all the required ones, they can go ahead and submit it. So you can do this, one of two ways. You could have, all your different panelists do their ratings, and then the system is going to average the scores and provide the scores that way. Or you could delegate one person to kind of get a committee score. So it's up to you as to how you want to do that. But if you do have multiple panelists, it's going to average out the different scores that the panelists gave. So if one person gave a 4 out of 5 and another person gave a 5 out of a 5, and those are the only two people rating that one question, the supplier would get 4.5 out of 5 in that particular category. So just the way that it works. Now that we've got our panel questionnaire in, I'm going to go ahead and close the panel questionnaire early. Of course, I could withdraw it and cancel the whole thing, the panel questionnaire. I could extend it out if one of my panelists let me know that they need more time. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and close it early. And as you can see, it's all closed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into evaluations, and let's go to supplier responses, and we'll take a look at the different responses that we've gotten. So I can go ahead and go to evaluation actions, and I can evaluate all the responses, or if I had 10 different responses in here, I could check off boxes next to the ones I wanted to evaluate, and then I could only evaluate the selected responses. So a couple of ways of doing that. I'll just go ahead and evaluate all the responses. And next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand this all out to see everything. And here we can see all the content, right? So we can see that we've got Jennifer's Awesome Company, we've got CLJ's 127 request. And this shows us the average questionnaire rating. So we can see that this supplier got a higher average questionnaire rating. They got a better auto score, but their price is like way more. So 440,000. We also see how the system automatically adjusted their bid price down based on the way they answered the questions. And then we can see also the questions and how they responded to the different questions. And then when we're ready, you can decide who you want to award the sourcing event to in a couple of ways. So I can click on view scenario, and there are some pre-built scenario analysis already in the tool. So if I wanted the system to just automatically award it to the single supplier who had the lowest overall price, I can click on single award, lowest bid price, and Jennifer's Awesome Company is going to be awarded this event, right? So I can save this one and say, I'll save this scenario as lowest price. So that can be one scenario. I can also go and say, well, show me go ahead and award everything to the supplier who has the best questionnaire rating. In that case, it's going to be this supplier, right? And I can save that one. Save that. So you can save as many of these scenarios as you want. And then once you're ready, you're gonna, you're gonna choose one of these scenarios, and you're gonna finalize your award. And then if we go back to the event, we can go to Tools and Approvals. And we can see, okay, right now it's in my buyer review step. So the buyer review step is designed to let the buyer communicate with the subject matter experts and the stakeholders and ultimately come to an award. And then the buyer is going to set the award in the tool. Even if they're not making the decision, they're going to be the one who says, okay, it's going to be ABC company. So they're going to select that scenario and they're going to finalize it. And then after they've finalized it, they are going to approve in the tool. They're going to go to workflow and they're going to click approve. Now, if your university has a procurement review, then it's going to go to procurement review, and it can be, someone in the procurement department can review the sourcing event award, and they can either approve it or not. And then FYI, if this was a multi-stage event, you could go to workflow actions and you could create another stage. So I can check off the suppliers that I'd want to go to the next stage, and I can tag the suppliers for the next stage and say, okay, these two suppliers are going to go to a best and final offer stage of the event. And I can go to workflow actions, and like I said, I could start the next stage. But in this case, I'm not going to start the next stage of the event. I'm just going to award based on the results of this stage. So let's go ahead and, we'll go back to tools and approvals, and I'll go ahead and approve in this step. So like I said, if your university wants a procurement review step, then it would route to the appropriate people in your university. They would be able to review the award, and they'd be able to decide if they want to approve it or not. So again, typically you would not have the ability to approve in this step, but I'm an administrator, so I can do what I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and approve it. And then it's going to hold in this hold for post review step. So if you're going to create a contract for this sourcing event, the idea is you would hold the award in this step until you have successfully authored a contract with the supplier. So what we don't want to happen is we don't want you to say, I'm going to award it to ABC company, get all the way to the end here, and then, a couple of weeks or a month into the contract authoring process, something falls out and you can't award it to ABC company. Because once you get here, this award to supplier step, you can't change your award anymore. That's it, set in stone forever. So it's it's in this hold for post review step where you can hold the award and potentially try to author a contract or something like that with the supplier. And if something falls through here, you can still in this step go back in and change your award if you need to. But to author a contract, what you can do is you can go to evaluation actions, evaluate all. You can go to the scenario breakdown, and you'll notice if you have the ability to create a contract from an awarded sourcing event, you can click create contract here. And this is the start of the contract creation process. So you can select a contract type. You can select the work group if it's not already selected for you. You could select a template if we've got one, click next, and that would start and then you can choose which line items you want to pull into your sourcing event. So you could say none, or you can say all of them, or let me pick the ones I want to pull in. And then you can click create contract. So that will start the contract creation process. So you can see here's the contract number that gets created for us. We can click into this and we can start authoring the contract. And then once we've got a signed and executed contract, I can go back into this event. And that's when I typically would go ahead and approve this through and say, yep, good news, we're able to come to a contractual agreement. I would approve this out, and then it would be all done. So that's how you can create a sourcing event, run it, run scenario analysis and panel questionnaires, and come up with an award selection and create a contract even if you want to. with that supplier, but you don't have to do that. And ultimately, when you approve it through, it changes the event status from under review to awarded. Questions or concerns for me? Looks like we got lots of questions here, and I don't know which ones have or have not been answered. So I guess if everyone wants to kind of
one,
go ahead.
I think I only answered the first one, so everything after that we need to answer.
Gotcha. Okay. So Karen McCall, under contracts, can you add an additional field to add your own contract number? So the system comes with an auto-generated contract number. If there is, so what would be the need to have a different contract number? Maybe we can talk about that.
There's actually another question at the top asking if they could had a field to capture an RFP number. So my thinking is we could probably add, if there's different circumstances for adding an identifier from RFP or something else, that we could kind of have a catch-all other field.
Yeah, and something to note about that, the system will automatically track the links between the two. So if I go into scenario breakdown here, I can see the contracts that are related to the sourcing event. And if I go into the sourcing event, or if I go into the contract, it's going to show me the links back to the old sourcing event. So the documents in the tool have deep links back into all of the interrelated documents. So I can see the sourcing event that created the contracts from the sourcing event, and I can see and vice versa, right? So there are deep links that'll take you back and forth between them. You don't have to have a field on here to type that in. The system's going to keep track of that for you. Does that make sense to everybody?
Sounds good. New question that came in. Looks like there's a campus designation and the generated contract number. That's correct. The work group gets pegged into the contract name.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, SSU you can see is in the contract number wheel, and it's in the sourcing event number wheel. So that's gonna automatically update based on the work group that you created the sourcing event out of. So like the university that you created the sourcing event out of.
Let's see. Can evaluators of the conflict of interest forms be included and saved here?
Can you add in? Let's see. Oops, I may have missed that one. Can evaluators? So that would be yeah. So you can let me go back to that real quick. You can definitely add that in the internal notes and attachments if you wanted to attach the evaluators conflict of interest form. So this would be the evaluators, right? Not the suppliers.
From Lori.
That's what it looks like to me, Chris.
Yep.
Internal conflict of interest from internal stakeholders who are doing the review.
Yeah. So yeah, you could definitely collect those from them and store them in this internal notes and attachments section.
Lori just confirmed yes.
Very
Thank
good.
you, Lori.
Next one up is, how do we allow the intent to award period? How do we allow of intent to award period?
Yeah, so talk to me about the purpose of the intent to award period. Is that just telling your, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a required notification of intent to award before award. So it's something I think we can, when on the public site, you can post that out as, you know, I think it's something we can walk through before we go live, but it from what I've seen from the system, it doesn't look like it's something we can't do, but
yeah, absolutely. So after you've made your award, you can add a public site attachment, and this is where you can attach documentation kind of explaining the award you've made. Okay, what's the next one?
One up, so panelists would need to already have access to CSUBUY, or they'd be notified outside the system. So that if we're doing the panelist review, they just have to have Jagger, the basic Jagger access, correct?
Correct. Yeah, anybody who has access to the system can be a panelist.
Can vendors provide volume discount options at time of bidding? I believe the answer is yes. Now the question is, we put what template or format they give them kind of open to them, or we could provide it, right?
Yeah, you're talking about like if they say, I'll give you a lower price for like 10,000 versus 1,000.
Is Lori still on? She went ahead and dropped. No, Lori's on. Lori, do you have any other clarifications on that?
That's correct. Let's say, for example, we're requesting a volume of 5, and at 6 we get a significant volume discount. And so the service provider would like to let us know that. Is there an option for them to enter that information so that we can take that into account prior to award or evaluation?
So you could definitely ask a question in the event, but there's not like a standard functionality. So there's a way to do it. It's all about how you ask the questions.
That may be one use case you want to start with when we start testing. Next one up is, can suppliers modify their submissions after they submit if the event hasn't been closed early?
Yes, if the event is not closed, they can go in and modify. They can even decide that they don't want to bid anymore, so they can change their intent to bid even if they want to.
Another one, will certifications, non-inclusion, etc. forms be entered into templates?
Will certifications, non-inclusions, etc. forms be entered into templates? I think that's still kind of being decided. We don't have the templates fully built out at this point in time. But certainly if you have a good use case for that, we could certainly consider it.
Yeah, that's one. One of the focus we'll have as we're going through testing, if we're looking to, as you saw, like the capabilities for libraries, right? Be it like questions or documents that are attachment libraries. We want to build those out over time. So as you're going through testing, we're certainly looking for feedback on things that would look like you use frequently, or even that could be leveraged across the system. Next question is around getting the suppliers onboarded. One thing to note is the potential third phase, we'd have full supplier onboarding, which would be more of a proactive outreach to all of our suppliers, get them fully registered and set up with CSU. In the interim, the process is slightly different. So the question here for Chris is the buyer responsible for registering the suppliers and or assisting them during the process? And do you have procedure guides for the suppliers? So the second part of that is, yes, we're working on both job aids for the suppliers as well as video snippets for the supplier facing website to help them interact with the system. We'll also be planning for the early November. Once we're up and live, we're going to be hosting kind of effectively open office hours for suppliers. I'm sure we'll name you at Supplier Summit, basically a supplier announcement that we're moving to CSUBUY. Join in if you want to see how that works. We'll have a couple channels out there, both reaching out proactively as well as having items, having things, artifacts and training items available for them. Chris, may you give a little more detail on the actual registration? So if you're gonna work with a new supplier, there is a new supplier request form out there. There's not to be too disjointed here, but as with contracts, so if you do want a new supplier that's not in the system, we'll need to do a supplier request for that. It's on the page that Chris is showing. Those route to David's team for creation. They're to make sure they get the correct supplier to eliminate supplier duplications within Jagger. That gets them available to be selected. So you want to go, once you go to start your event, if it's the first time that they're interacting with CSU, Chris can tell you what happens.
Yeah, so if it's the first time for them interacting, essentially what's going to happen is they're going to get an email asking them to participate in a sourcing event. And they'll be able to click on a link in the email, and that'll take them directly into the system. If it's their first time, they will fill out a very short user profile. They'll submit that, and then they'll be able to go right into their sourcing event and start bidding on the event, kind of like what you saw me do.
Excellent. Is there going to be an standardization of templates? That is the ultimate goal. It won't be immediate, but yeah, as we develop, as we build out the capability and templates to the extent we can have standardized templates, that is the objective. What else we got? So we talk about how new suppliers register to participate. There's also a public site. They'll be able to see what bids are out there. Can we use UNSPC in lieu of NAICS?
So plans to go into with UNSPSC. So yes.
Yes, that's the preferred, and that's what we'll be moving to. Is there a function for keeping track of vendor questions and posting the answers publicly so everyone can see the answers?
Yep, that was that public Q&A board that I was showing a little earlier.
Can you move questions from one group to another group?
Absolutely.
Can prereqs be campus specific?
Sure.
See, well, now we're rolling. Everything's a yes for this guy. If the event manager makes a change, is the owner notified for approval before any notice goes out to the bidders?
So every change is tracked in a history. So I designed the ad hoc approvals to go first to the buyer to set up the ad hoc approvals, and then essentially you would add your manager if you needed their approval before the event goes out. And then when it comes back to you, you can check on the history to see those changes.
Got the additional field, and that was yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we won't need the additional field to capture the RFP number because it's automatically going to link the two things together once if you do that, if you create the contract from the awarded event.
Is there an option to filter vendors by certifications? Two-sided. So when we get into phase 3, when everything on the supplier record is populated, yes. In the short term, we are updating that in the event. I just need more commentary on that. It's our DVBE designations and those. That's only where we have it in the supplier record. It's not complete right now.
Correct. Yeah. Once we get into phase 3, the idea is we'll be collecting diversity information at the supplier record. And so you'll be able to see that in the supplier's record directly in the system.
You could make a prereq to your sourcing event saying that it's only for SBE and DVBE only, if that's what you're shooting for.
Yep, exactly.
Can a supplier find the sourcing event themselves and then register in the system for the
Yes, event? Absolutely. If you post it to the public Q&A board, or not to the public Q&A, if you post the event to the public site, your suppliers will be able to find that on the public site. So let me show you what that looks like really quickly so you get an idea. A lot of great questions. Yep. So here's the public Q&A board, or not the public Q&A, the public site. So this welcomes, the suppliers to the bidding opportunities, so they can see all the sourcing events that are open for bid, ones that are upcoming, ones that have closed, ones that have already been awarded. So if it was one that was open and they wanted to participate, they could click on open for bid, and they could respond to the event and get in and submit their bid.
And then the next couple questions are, there will be guides and QRGs? Absolutely. We're going to work on those now, so we should have those shortly. What we'll do, the way we work with those, we put a draft version out, and as part of this testing effort, we'll look for feedback from the group and get those tuned up, so when we go live for a broad audience, they're in CSU speak and understandable. We have separate systems that generate requisition numbers that tie to a PO from CFS. The PO number is used as a contract number. So we do have a PO number field on contracts.
Yeah. Let me get back to that real quick. So when you're drafting your contract, just find one really quickly. There's a field here for you to type in your purchase order number.
And then one more. Are there any restrictions to using the system for public works projects? No, there are some enhancements coming. So we have a working group for construction and public works where we've made it through the contracts piece. So we'll be working out, that will trail a little bit in terms of completeness. But I believe prior to go live, we should be able to get the public works requirements embedded in the system. So yeah, no limitations, but we do want to have them. We do need to do some cleanup. What else? This was a fantastic group here. Beth's going to have FAQs all day long out of this meeting.
No kidding. This is great.
While you're doing some more, we're new on additional questions. So procedurally, we have, we found it's best to just push all the documents out, you guys. So we do have, Chris, if you want to show them the use case document for sourcing. So we'll provide a couple things. One is we have an inventory of scenarios that the core team had put together early on. So that's where you can focus on actual testing. And those are more or less end-to-end business scenarios. What we suggest is best, right? Is use your own real world examples. If you run recent events, whatever they are, run those in Jagger so you can really get the feel for what's different. We have it's a use case list, which is actually the detailed steps of each different bit. It's not in job aid format. It is in step-by-step testing format. So again, it's a union, a combination of this and the use cases. So your end-to-end scenario may be, we'll want to do a 2-stage event, the 3 different vendors, and have one cancel it and one back out early or something. So that's your scenario. What this document contains is all the steps involved to do the different bits of that. So we will send this out, and you'll see in the bottom there's different roles. To some degree, it's repetitious across, but you'll have different roles. You'll have different access. So, for example, a stakeholder is only going to be able to see different events without being able to interact with them. The sourcing managers and buyers will have more abilities, so they may the same actual activities will appear for different roles. So following the call today, I will be sending out an email with this as an attachment. You can also use this as sort of your progress. So as you're going to save off the document, help you take notes and mark up what steps are complete if you're testing over a long period of time. I've also sent out the scenarios. I believe in most cases we do have an application called Asana, which is I believe most people are probably set up. I'll take one more run at sending providing access for logging issues. But I think in the near term, it's probably easier to work through. And I hate the volunteer. Is Jen out here? She's not a volunteer anyway. So Jennifer Barrett and Claire and myself probably. So I'll put in the email addresses to shoot issues to, but I'll also work on getting broader access to this to our issue logging tool. But sometimes that becomes more trouble than it's worth. Same drill as with contracts. Once you've logged in, we'll need to make sure you have the right permissions assigned. So if you do go into the test system and you don't have the sourcing items available, or you may get a message saying something like you're not assigned to a work group, let us know. That's expected. So from a user provisioning standpoint, it'll work like this in production as well. Again, it's another item until phase 3, when we have automated user integration with your supplier, with your identity management system. But what we'll do is every time you log into the system for the first time, it creates a Jagger ID. Once that's there, our team or system admins can go in and give you the right roles and permissions you need. So that's requested as soon as you logged in. Shoot us a note and we will get you the right access. Once we go into production, there'll be more communications on that as well. It'll be the same drill. If you hadn't logged into Marketplace or contracts in production, by the time we go live with this, it'll be the same item. You need to log in once and we'll set your permissions. Any other questions? Like I said, of all the training sessions, this has had the most questions. This has been excellent. But everyone's shy and staying on mute, so So next steps, there's a series of office hours out there for this week. I'll put a couple more for next week. Again, involve anyone in your teams that you'd like. We'll have 2 more formal training sessions ahead of go live. Again, what we're looking for feedback, we're looking for, are there additional attributes that you want to capture on these events? Are there any templates that you can offer up from your campus that are used periodically? Any suggestions or inventories for question libraries or their attachment libraries that would be helpful to start building this out to make things easy over time. That's what we're looking for. Also, if there's any verbiage doesn't make sense. Another one we're trying to get feedback from is, as us on the core product team are going through, we kind of know what everything means on the screen, but we can add help text pretty liberally throughout the application. So if there's any fields or data points that would benefit from some expanded help text, let us know that as well. And that's all I got.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good week. We'll talk soon.